Hello, James and Kirsty. Today I'm going to introduce my 21st century Railton House Pavilion. This is my external perspective view from the rear facade of the Railton House. As we can see, the Railton Pavilion is inspired by the wisdom of the labor straw hats, those grass hats, and which is from Lingnan architecture, and modern rhythm of Bauhaus, and that will bring the organic form on the high density inner city area. Those concepts actually developed from the Lingnan architecture, which is the Chinese traditional architecture, but that kind of culture got 2,000 years history. And that Lingnan region, like Guangdong, Shenzhen, those famous cities, they actually is subtropical weather, which is very similar to Queensland, so which get pretty good similarities. And they usually use long and narrow design, like cold alleys, which got only a few sunshine across the year. But also they got the series from the straw hats, like they narrow up the path so the wind flows through, getting faster and getting all those ventilation faster as well, bring the heat out. And that will come to the design for the building. And once it comes to my Railton House Pavilion, from the existing one, it got the straw hats shape. And I also applied the same series on my pavilion as well, but with a mini version definitely. And also the local climate, the subtropical climate, is pretty rainy. That's why they usually surround all the landscape around the building or in the center of the building, which actually protect the plants from the rain and hails. This is my research of Lingnan architecture, which I draw from the other competition I've done recently. So all those works, you can see the bricks, they actually adopt the nature form of the structure and the material of concrete, and you can see those landscape is actually surrounding around the buildings, and the cold alley series, and this is pretty similar to the Railton House shed at the back of the facade. And you can see the buildings actually applies nature material, which really got the finishes like a white plasterboard. For the research of my Railton house, the existing house, it actually located in the Spring Hill CBD, and it got a pretty good high land value, so the planning of the space need to be efficient. And the side block is long and narrow, usually like a square, not a square, pure square one, but much more like a more fatty shape. But this land block is more like a long and narrow census, and you can see all those aging populations growing up, all the children is going down, and you can also see the main people using the area is all those independent youth and some matured as well. So independent youth still definitely get some entertainment, social events, and for those elders, they might got some disability in function or lacks functionalities. So it is good to get the pavilion in the ease of access design. And you can see the urban sprawl, and those long and narrow stuff, windowless is only a few windows around, and it actually surrounded by the building, which is pretty close as well. And the Queenslander is actually sitting on the slope and with nature materials, which is pretty similar to the Bauhaus, which in the John's interview he has mentioned the Bauhaus modernism impact, and all those material I have drawn from those existing house is actually the nature material. So whatever is in the facade, it also appears in the internal space as well. There's no additional internal finishes on it. Simple divisions on the upper floor, the lower floor and upper floor is actually on the same plan. It's actually like on the symmetry axis on the near the stairs. But you can see those upper stairs, it has been divided by those little spaces, by those grid lines and all those small partitions. So yeah, if you want a big space, possibly you can open it up. Those small space will form a big one. But if you want to get some private stuff, you just use the partitions to lock it up. Then that's your private space. And the rule of thirds, definitely. As you can see, it actually divides up the thing from vertically the roof, the upper floor, the roof, upper floor, and also the ground. Those upper floor, ground, and the basement actually forms up the rule of thirds. However, due to the privacy issues, I can't do it in my vertical rules, so I did that horizontally, which you can see more clearly later on. As you can see, I applied the timber texture and the glazing, the steels, and the brick is 1/3 horizontally. Here's my bubble diagram of the existing house and the pavilion, but all those things is connected by the external hard space, which is terrace, backyard shed, and landscape. And in the internal areas, the stair actually connects all the essential space. From the pavilion, if I can get upstairs, then I'll do that from the I'll do that to look down into the backyard. So here's my research. This inspired me the most. It's actually the tree house. It actually got a pavilion, and how that pavilion connect to the existing space, landscape, and covered walkway. Second option, which requires quite a bit space, so I pass it out. And the third option, I did a bit messing. The landscape here doesn't really look really pleasant. And the fourth option, which is the upper floor, but you can see all those windows. It's actually surrounded by the windows on 3 facades, which makes the upper stairs pretty hard to get in the window openings, and you might need to look around each other. So my space adjacency diagram, those things are pretty self-explanatory. And I did my site context research, all those cooling wind from the north, some parts. So it's good to get the living room in the northeast of the building. And you can see it's sitting on the terrain. I just remove all the additional stuff on the side plan and from the roof plan, and you can see the materials I have applied. And here's my floor plan: ground floor, upper floor, and you can see the circulations. The host will actually using all the existing house, and they want to stay in if they want to look themselves and getting some retreat areas. Guests can either enter from the main entry or enter from the back. They actually tour around, getting all the communal space. And the community, once it's open for community, it will use the backyard and the pavilion. So which you can see is pretty self-explanatory. It gets 3 modes. One for the all closed up, so private space, shared space, private, and for family, so you can friends, you can actually stay here while you get this thing opened up. No one can actually disturb you. If you open up fully for community, people can get it through, and this existing house will become the totally private area. That's the material I have mentioned previously, and I applied the same material. And the north elevation, the rule of thirds, and you can also see it actually getting up, like going up the hill. From the front facade, the building, which you can see from the other side, it actually form like the same stuff, the same language. And from the west facade, as you can see, the sidewalks for going up, and I also installed some balustrade to form that narrow path which leads to the side gates. And you can see all those forms of the building roofs are actually similar to the pitch roofs, but not purely the same. And the east long facades are actually putting the road levels, which you can see where the building located towards the roads and the nearby terrains. And the existing house is actually sitting on the top of the hill. Sections 1 to 50 cutting through the entry. As you can see, I have applied the same brick, which is same to the external area. Internal space, as you can see, all those crook for the living area, and the kitchen, and my internal elevation is actually facing those two directions. So the direction towards the entry, which you can see the kitchen, lounge, dining, and the direction towards the entry as well, but to the other side, which you can see the kitchen, which you can use people sitting here for the lounge, and that's the way towards. This is towards the terrace and backyard, and that's towards the outside. As you can see from the external perspective, which I haven't drawn the graphs yet, it should be like a climbing uphill, so people actually going from here, going up here, I mean the house going up a little bit down and going flat, going up again. It's like a hill, like you going up, flat, up, flat. It's forming the same languages. It's more like a entry, more like a gate towards the main house. And you can see I have designed the skylight, which people from those balconies cannot look into the stuff. And the internal perspective view, how the space, overall space, which is pretty self-explanatory. So here's all my research. I mean, I definitely got more than that, but this is the main ones I have used in the design report. And some additional views, which is the courtyard towards the pavilion, and pavilion towards the courtyards looking each other once I close it up. And from the existing house, the dining look into the pavilion, and from upper stair towards the pavilion, you can see it's got a pretty good privacy. And what's more, from the back perspective, like both pavilion and the existing house share the communal space of the backyard, the landscape. And from the fully open store from the pavilion, once you look into the existing house, it can actually see the shed, but you cannot actually see the existing house, so it still provide a good privacy. So now I just ran through the models pretty quick. So that's my models. Existing one, I got a pretty good high details, and also got pretty high details for all the existing house as well. making model is pretty addictive. And you can see it's actually getting up here, so people can walk it around pretty easy. I just rotate around the model. As you can see, it doesn't need the window, so that's why it's windowless. It's pretty long and narrow, forming the same space with the shed, making use of the shed. And once you get it done, I also got the accessibilities, the disabled toilet, which takes me quite a bit space, but still I think it's worthwhile. Even though it's a big block, but still it forms the same language with the existing building. In the pavilion, I actually applied more timber facade, which is a balance for the brick. It actually softens the space and it makes the space looks more modern as well. It actually stressed the theme 21st century pavilion. And you can see those bifolding doors, once you can just open it up, it actually can getting it collected at this space. And in the internal areas, I also put in some cats. If you want to move the furniture around, you can actually use this corner to store the furniture. So all this, the community hub and backyard and the shed will form a large open space which can be used for community as well. And this is the way towards the disability toilet. All the dimensions are applying the Australian standard. And the roofs are covered. I wish I could get a more organic roof, but due to the limitation of the watching from the neighborhood. So if you stay in the house, you want to watch outside, you can watch it. But if you want to get the privacy, getting the curtains up, or maybe install the louvers so people cannot disturb the space. And you can see all those minor areas are covered by the landscape, so use the landscape as a natural barrier. Thank you.